A rogue trader who targeted elderly victims and scammed them out of hundreds of pounds has been jailed for 4 years. Daryl Gola, 32, targeted elderly people in Wisbech over the summer, calling at their houses and offering to carry out work including cleaning gutters and repairing roofs. Mr. Gola charged disproportionate amounts for the work and demanded payment up front before failing to return to complete the jobs. On 2 occasions, Mr. Gola even followed his victims into their homes. Mr. Gola of Lynette Drive, Wisbech, was sentenced to 4 years in prison after pleading guilty to 2 counts of dwelling burglary and 2 counts of fraud. Detective Constable Tom Adams, who investigated, said Mr. Gola was cold and callous in his pursuit of victims, demanding excessive amounts for very little work. He took advantage of the victims' vulnerabilities and, on 2 occasions, brazenly stole from them when they weren't looking or had left the room. I am glad justice has been done today. A man who was given a second chance by a judge has been jailed after being found with an axe. Isaac Crouch, 27, was given a suspended sentence in January this year for threatening someone with a knife the previous May. However, in the early hours of the 18th of September, Mr. Crouch arrived at Peterborough City Hospital and threatened to harm staff if he didn't get seen straight away. Officers arrived, arrested Mr. Crouch, and when searching his rucksack in custody found the axe. On Tuesday the 26th of November at Cambridge Crown Court, Mr. Crouch of Moulton Grove, Ravensthorpe, Peterborough was jailed for 18 months, having pleaded guilty to possession of an offensive weapon in a public place. PC Ellie Nichols said, Mr. Crouch clearly hadn't learnt his lesson from being found with a weapon previously. Good news, he's faced justice. Tackling knife crime is a forced priority, and we recently ran a weapons amnesty that saw a record number of 370 weapons handed in. A man who kept returning to the UK despite being deported 5 times has been jailed. Lithuanian national Andrius Kakas, 44, signed a deportation order in March 2015 and was first removed in November 2015, but he kept returning and was deported again in February 2019, June 2021, May 2022 and August 2023. Police officers arrested him for unrelated matters in Westwood, Peterborough at around 7 PM on the 26th of April. In custody, he was also found to be in breach of his deportation order. On December the 2nd, at Peterborough Crown Court, Mr. Vakorkas of Floor Close, Westwood, Peterborough, was jailed for 2 years, having pleaded guilty to knowingly entering the UK in breach of a deportation order. He will be deported once again once he has served his sentence. PC Tom Todd said, I hope this case sends out a strong message to people found to be breach of deportation orders. You will be eventually found. Mr. Vakorkas knew full well he was illegally in Britain and had flouted the order multiple times, so it's not surprising he had been handed a jail term. A man has been jailed after he stabbed another man in the arm outside a Peterborough pub. Matthew Swanborough, 29, attacked a man outside the Crown pub in Lincoln Road, Millfield, at around 10:25 PM on the 23rd of September. Witnesses wrestled the weapon from him and managed to restrain him until police arrived. The stabbing followed an earlier argument in the pub between Mr. Swanborough and the victim, after which the former was asked to leave. He did so, but waited outside for the victim. Mr. Swanborough denied wounding with intent and threatening a person with a blade, sharply pointed article in a public place, but pleaded guilty to wounding, inflicting grievous bodily harm without intent, and pleaded guilty to possession of a knife in a public place. He was jailed for 1 year at Peterborough Crown Court. PC Yeli Yasevis, who investigated, said Mr. Swanborough's violent behaviour was unprovoked and cowardly, and the outcome could have been so much worse. A man who smashed up his neighbour's car during a campaign of harassment has been jailed. James Dickinson, 39, caused £15,000 of damage to a car with a baseball bat and was convicted of criminal damage in May this year. He was handed a restraining order prohibiting him from contacting his neighbour in Latch Close, Yaxley, near Peterborough. However, from May to July, Mr. Dixon continued to hurl abuse at the victim over his garden fence, blaming her for his conviction and calling her a lowlife. He also knocked on his own upstairs window to get the woman's attention. Officers arrested him, and in a police interview, Mr. Dixon admitted he was breaching his restraining order. He was released on bail with conditions not to go near Latch Close. However, on the 9th of August, just a couple of weeks before Mr. Dixon was due to appear in court, he appeared outside the victim's home, yelling abuse again. He repeatedly knocked the door and used a brick to smash her car lights, wing mirrors and panels. Another neighbour approached Mr. Dixon and told him to stop, which he did before throwing a brick to the ground. Officers arrested Mr. Dixon, and in an interview he said there was no excuse for doing what he did, and added he had been slightly intoxicated. At Cambridge Crown Court, Mr. Dixon of Crocus Way, Yaxley, was jailed for a year and 1 month after pleading guilty to 2 counts of harassment, breaching a restraining order and criminal damage. PC Dan Green, who investigated, said Mr. Dixon pursued and sustained a campaign of harassment towards his neighbours, which led to her feeling unsafe in her own home and put her through a great deal of stress. I am very pleased the seriousness of this offence has been recognised with this custodial sentence. Harassment of any kind will not be tolerated. A drug dealer who tried to hide from the police has been jailed after his DNA was found on a discarded handgun in Peterborough. Neighbourhood officers were on patrol in Eastfield on the afternoon on the 13th of June in response to concerns from residents about drug dealing in the area. Spotted Zioni Lazaj, 18, known to be a disqualified driver, driving a black Vauxhall and followed it to a dead-end street in Dickens Street, where Mr. Lazaj got out and ran from the officers, initially losing them in nearby gardens. The officers were searching the area and came across a plastic bag in the bushes, which they believed had been ditched by an associate of Mr. Lazaj. In it was a handgun, £4,000 in cash, and almost £16,000 worth of cocaine. Shortly after, Mr. Lazaj jumped over a wall onto the airfield's cycleway right in front of an officer, who chased after him and placed him under arrest. A search of Mr. Lazaj's home in Dickens Street, Eastfield, uncovered firearms ammunition, multiple mobile phones, £580 worth of cannabis, handwritten notes which appeared to be a debt sheet, and £950 in cash. Forensic testings of the discarded firearm found Mr. Lazaj's DNA on it. He was charged of being in possession of a firearm, namely a handgun, being in concern with the supply of cocaine and cannabis, and driving whilst disqualified, all of which he admitted in court. He appeared at Peterborough Crown Court, where he was sentenced to 6.5 years in prison, and has been disqualified from driving for 59 months. Craig Leslie, who investigated, said, "This was a great spot by the neighbourhood officers, who were responding to concerns from the local community intelligence about drug dealing in the area. I appreciate the recovery of a viable firearm may be alarming. There is absolutely no place for this type of activity in our county, and I would urge the public to continue working with us so we can take the dangerous weapons and drugs off our street." A teenager who robbed 2 men at knife point and attacked a police officer with a concrete slab has been sentenced to more than 4 years in custody. Noah Hardingham, 19, approached 2 men who were sitting in a car at High Peace Crescent over at around 9:30 PM on the 17th of June. Mr. Hardingham of Lowbury Home Road over Cambridge held a knife to one victim's neck, telling him to get into the rear seat. He then instructed the other victim to drive to the end of the road. Brandishing the knife, Mr. Hardingham ordered the 2 victims to get out of the car, telling them it's not worth losing your lives over a car. He also ordered the 2 men to leave their phones and wallets. Mr. Hardingham drove away in the car, which was later found abandoned on the side of a nearby road. Mr. Hardingham stole several items, including a designer watch, a bag, a pair of shoes and 2 phones. The robbery was not reported to the police at the time, and the next day, the 2 brothers, who were friends of the robbery victims, confronted Mr. Hardingham after spotting him in the local area. Mr. Hardingham tried to run away, but the 2 men caught up and punched him repeatedly in the back of the head. He retaliated later that day by going to the home of the men and waiting outside armed with 2 smashed wine glasses. He also armed himself with a concrete slab and threatened the men. Police arrived. Mr. Hardingham charged towards an officer, hitting him around the head with a slab. The officer was taken to Hitchinbrook Hospital with a serious laceration to his face, and Mr. Hardingham was arrested. On Friday the 22nd of November at Peterborough Crown Court, Mr. Hardingham was sentenced to 4 years and 4 months in a young offenders institution after pleading guilty to robbery, wounding with intent and criminal damage. PC Andy Waters, who investigated, said Mr. Hardingham showed no remorse for his violent behaviour at all of which has had a lasting impact on the victims. He used a piece of concrete to attack a police officer, leaving him to need hospital treatment. This will have been extremely frightening for the victims involved, and I hope this sentence shows that knife crime and violent behaviour is not tolerated in Cambridgeshire.
Brick in hand. Just be careful, he's just there. Put your hands out! Put your hands out! Put your hands out! Fuck! Get a guy off. Someone's bleeding. Yeah, just take this guy away.
You got me, boys. You got.
A knife-wielding man who threatened to kill a police officer who was pursuing him through Cambridgeshire has been jailed. Aaron Muxlow, 34, fled from officers after they were called to an incident in which he abused his ex-partner at her home in Camp King Road, King's Hedges, Cambridgeshire, at about 9 AM on Friday the 11th of October. Mr. Muxlow had pulled the video doorbell off a wall and was being aggressive. Officers found him in Nuns Way, where he pulled a large kitchen knife from his waistband and threatened one of the officers. He ran off and said he would kill the officer who was following him from a distance, waiting for the firearms officers to arrive. Mr. Muxlow was eventually arrested by armed officers outside a medical centre in Pippin Drive at 2:30 the same day. Cambridgeshire Crown Court, Mr. Muxlow, of no fixed address, was jailed for 2 years, having pleaded guilty to criminal damage, possession of a knife in a public place, threats to kill, and possession of cannabis. PC Bohr said Mr. Muxlow is a violent individual who shamelessly threatened my colleague with a knife. This highlights the dangers officers can face daily. Cambridgeshire Police will continue working with partner agencies and local communities to remove knives and drugs from the street. We encourage people to report any concerns they have about anyone carrying weapons and drugs in their community.
Mate, what are you doing? Get back. Male with a knife, he threatened me with a knife, he's running off. Come back. Mate, you're not going anywhere, buddy. He's got 2 large knives in his hand. Oh, take a left down the back. Keeps turning around and coming at me with the 2 knives. Mate. All right. I'm fine, I've got about 30 metres between us, but at me.
Aaron, okay, we're going to handcuff you to the front, but we need to make sure you're secure, okay? Aaron, listen to us, get on your knees, go on the pavement so you don't dirty your tracksuit. Get on your knees, put your arms out to the side, we'll come towards you, we'll put you in handcuffs, alright? Yeah, we'll put you to smoke a cigarette, okay? But get on your knees, put your hands out to the side. We won't, fella, we won't, okay? Unless you offer... Listen, Aaron. Aaron, Aaron, unless you offer us any violence. Okay. Keep your hands together. Keep your hands as you are. We'll close him. We'll cuff him. Right. Someone go, let's taser out. Just. Yeah. That's fine. No, that's fine. Male detained in cuffs.
An aggressive beggar who spat on a Cambridgeshire resident in an unprovoked attack has been jailed. Jason Allen, 38, of Edgecombe, Cambridgeshire, was handed an indefinite criminal behaviour order (CBO) with conditions not to act in an antisocial or disorderly manner that causes or is likely to cause nuisance, disruption or annoyance to any person in Cambridgeshire, and enter an exclusion zone within the city. Between 12 and the 2nd of August, Mr. Allen breached the conditions of his CBO 14 times, which were all captured on CCTV. On the 27th of July, Mr. Allen spat on a woman who was unknown to him in Petty Cutty in an unprovoked attack. At Cambridgeshire Crown Court, Mr. Allen was sentenced to 2 years and 1 month in prison after pleading guilty to 14 breaches of a CBO and common assault. His CBO remains in place. PC Laura O'Flynn, who investigated, said Mr. Allen has been supported extensively by the Cambridgeshire Neighbourhood Policing Team, probation, housing services, mental health services, drug and alcohol services, and teams that support vulnerable adults. The CBO was applied for to manage Mr. Allen's behaviour and protect the public of Cambridgeshire from his relentless, aggressive begging, which has been known to result in criminal damage and physical assaults. However, despite extensive work to assist and support him, Mr. Allen has continued to breach the order, and this sentence today reflects the impact his behaviour is having within our community. Upon his release, we will continue, as we have in the past, to work with partner agencies to offer further support. A burglar was caught after DNA left at the scene proved it was 1 billion times more likely to be him than anyone else. Niku Bontea, 24, smashed his way into the property on Orwell Road, Barrington, near Cambridge, while the home owners were out, but left a trail of DNA around the cottage. Black balaclava with identifying saliva was also found discarded at the property by the homeowners when they returned from a night out. Amongst the haul of the property stolen from the cottage on the 28th of November were distinctive rings, jewellery of sentimental value, spare car keys, watches, binoculars, a camera, and a historical Special Forces Scorpion knife. Mr. Bontea of Sydenham Road, London, pleaded guilty at an earlier hearing to burglary after initially denying he was ever in Cambridgeshire. He was sentenced at Cambridge Crown Court to 15 months imprisonment. DC Zoe Bramley said the burglary caused substantial loss to the homeowners who had highly sentimental jewellery stolen but never recovered. The DNA from multiple sources proved without a doubt that Mr. Bontea was at the property. These forensics enabled us to gather evidence and arrest him. Although the jewellery was never recovered, I hope the sentencing provides some sense to the victims that justice has prevailed. Burglary is not a victimless crime. It is an invasion of someone's home and possessions, and can have a lasting impact on their well-being. A man described by a judge as having a deep-seated and dangerous attitude towards women has been jailed after trying to control every aspect of his partner's life. Ali Iman, 24, was in a relationship with a woman for about a year, but towards the end of 2022, his coercive behaviour escalated. He began to control who his girlfriend spoke to, what she wore, if she used makeup, and often made abusive and derogatory comments towards her. He would get angry if she didn't clean or make dinner. Mr. Iman isolated her from her family and friends, tracked her and monitored her phone and social media. He sent coercive and controlling messages, physically assaulted the woman, and even cut up her clothes. In April 2023, the woman ended the relationship and confided in the police what had been happening to her. Mr. Iman of Abbeyfields, Fleeton, Peterborough, was arrested on suspicion of coercive and controlling behaviour, but in police interviews, he denied it to the officers. His phone was seized and an analysis revealed the sheer scale of messages he had sent to his girlfriend. In just 6 weeks, he had asked the woman what she was doing 178 times, where she was more than 200 times, and accused her of cheating on him 16 times, mainly when she did not answer his messages immediately. Mr. Imam was charged with 1 count of coercive and controlling behaviour, which he initially denied, but pleaded guilty with a basis of a plea at Cambridge Crown Court this September. He was sentenced at the same court, where he was jailed for 2 years and 3 months. Mr. Imam was also handed a restraining order for life, ordering him not to contact his former partner or her family by any means, nor refer to them directly or indirectly on social media. Handing down the restraining order, Judge Andrew Hurst told Mr. Imam, "You will forget the woman and her family and leave them entirely alone." Sentencing, he told Mr. Imam he made the victim's life a misery for nearly a year and had no doubt he had sought to control every aspect of the woman's life, when she should have been respected for who she was and by the person she allowed into her life. Judge Hurst said that in Mr. Imam's basis of a plea, he accepted he had sent coercive and controlling messages, physically assaulting the woman and cut up her clothes. He added that the family and friends had noted the change in the woman, who had had an exciting career ahead of her, but had become secretive and isolated. Judge Hurst said it was unknown how much, if ever, the woman could ever recover, and added, "A once independent young girl has been broken. Her mother now feels sad when she sees other happy, healthy young girls." The judge noted that Mr. Imam still took no responsibilities for what he had done and had a deep-seated and dangerous attitude towards women. He described Mr. Imam as controlling, needlessly jealous and demanding, and concluded by saying, "The only way that you're going to understand that you can never do this to another woman again is to do what you told her to do. Look in the mirror. You need to understand what it is in you that made you damage this young girl so much." DC Abby McQuaid, who investigated, said no person should have to suffer this kind of abuse, and the case helped to highlight that domestic abuse wasn't always just physical. She added, "Victims can also suffer from the threat and fear of injury, daily intimidation, and having every aspect of their life monitored and controlled. Coercive control is a criminal offence, and as this case highlights, we take all reports very seriously. We would strongly urge anyone who is a victim of domestic abuse to contact the police or call the National Domestic Violence Helpline on 0808 2000 247.